Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, now welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast. My name is Constance Brooks, and this episode we're going to talk about future and the past, bro. And what the reason why this episode came to me because I made it into 2023, and it's like, this as I said, this podcast I started it kinda in 2019. I know I'm in 2023, so now a lot of things have changed since then, and it's like, but the thing about it is that even before 2019, before the podcast and all of that, I was still still alive. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. And the thing about it is that, you know, the future and the past. I see a vision where I can create a future for a lot of stuff. But it's like, it's hard to describe. It's like, it's like, the time machine talks that everybody we have been having since the dawn of time, the time machine talks. And the thing about it is that every year, this is my theory now that I reached this far. My theory is that every year we there's something close to that time machine thing. And it's not necessarily going back in time or stuff like that. There's certain stuff that I mentioned. Like for example, one of my episodes where I talk about the old way versus the new way. That's an example of the future and the past. You know, when you go to museum, you see the past and see the various version of the past, how we evolve or stuff like that. And then you see yourself and you say, oh, yes, you see the changes. The thing about it is that, I guess the first thing in my future and past that I differentiate is that the truth. So when you, the future and past I'm talking about is the truth with future and past, where you can actually see where you actually go into the future with the right knowledge and right where everything is solid and right, and you can go back to the past and see what really was happening to really understand the past. Because they say you have to know your past before you can create a good future. Or if you want to create a good future, you have to know your past, know where you come from, and stuff like that. So, like, if your past is filled with all these lies and all those stuff made up by, I guess, the victor of the victor of the past and stuff like that, and not the truth, not what really happened, then your future your future is going to be as foggy as your past, because what happened is that you're going in with wrong assumptions. Like for example, in science. So for example, in science, this pandemic, what this pandemic kind of did was science was really shaken, because all the things that I learned about science in the real world was so so what I mean is that, so I went to school and learned science. And this is this thing where I say in the real world is really it's really foggy. It's like everybody trying to win it. It's competitive, and illegal practices, all this stuff. Every bad thing you can think of, it's really in the real world. It's really in the real world. But in school, what you have is basically, regardless if people can say indoctrination or whatever, it's standard. So in the school system, it's standard. So when you learn stuff, regardless if it's wrong or not. Or let's say, I won't say wrong. I won't say wrong. I would say, regardless if it was something given by the truth given us by some elite or something like that in the school that we learned. What happened was that in the school it was standard. So you learn how to do things that certain way, and the thing about it that the further you go, you understand why it was done a certain way. And what happened is that if you reach further in the school and if you reach high enough, you can fully understand why it was done that way, and then you can create your way, and then it could be a new standard in the school that could be added. And then when that happens now, you become this new knowledge now becomes the new conspiracy theory. They say, okay, well, this real or not. So that's the thing. So that's the thing. So when I say, so as I said, the future and the past is foggy. If the past is foggy, the future will be foggy as well. It's because if everything that we learn that was created by someone, every time it's presented back to someone else, we have to really question it. The future will always be rocky, and we can't have a solid foundation. So can't have a solid foundation. So the future and the past. So the first thing about the future and past. This is like this episode is basically like I said, this phase of the podcast is more exploring. It's exploring because I'm spreading my. It's like I never thought I would reach this far. So it's like what happened is that I guess this is like the next me projecting 2024. Me projecting 2024, and what I've realized so far about the future and past is that the future is is not usually as futuristic as you think so far. So far, what being reaching 2023, futuristic is not really as futuristic as you think. Like for example, this podcast. Yeah, suppose for example, high school person now start listening to my podcast, so they hear some stuff and be like, "Yo," it's like for example, when I was in high school, I usually watch YouTube videos. But I watch YouTube video just when, and I watch it when YouTube was first created, but it was in its early stages. That's when I started watching YouTube. That's when I started to get internet. I usually watch anime on YouTube. And if you listen to the podcast, you know how I watch anime on YouTube. So so if you listen to that episode, you will see the past, not really necessarily the full anime community past, but my anime past and where I'm at now, which is a long way from there. But what on YouTube, what I usually watch was like people playing gameplays, video game gameplays, Call of Duty, and I usually have my favorite person that I usually watch. I usually love watching this video, love watching his commentary and stuff like that. And that to me that was future. The way he did it was really it was basically he that made him like he started something out of his like fun. So he was the first to say, "Okay, I'm going to start gameplay and stuff like that." But what happened was he started his version of how he liked to play the game, do his gameplay, and then all of a sudden, his way of doing things became became like one of the top way. Like he became one of the top video game person when it came to NBA basketball, NBA 2K. He was the top sports person because of how his commentary and stuff like that and stuff like that. But the thing was that he started from the bottom, and his way was he never changed his way of doing things. If you get his core way of doing stuff, he never did it. He never changed it. But that way got him to the top. And what happened was he became like a standard. He became what people when NBA basketball person, I mean when NBA players, people that play NBA 2K started to make YouTube channels. They were what he was kind of emulating. They never create. They made their own lane of doing stuff like that. But his success is what made other people do it and stuff like that. And it's funny enough, I when I started saying, okay, I'm going to make my YouTube channel about gaming and stuff like that. He was what I also take some things from as well, because what happened was he was who I grew up on, so might as well learn from the best, learn from the best. So as I said, the future and past thing, and what happened. So the future and past episode. When I start doing my thing now, I I will be the future, and he will be the past, bro. And the thing about it is that when he was the future, I'm sure people there was people that he got influence from. Not they were the past now and they were the future, and stuff like says that that's where I go. And for same so for this podcast, same thing. When I started the podcast, the people I listened to, so for example, suppose my podcast blow up and become this big thing, big number one and stuff like that, and be like, yo, stuff like that. And they say, yes, this podcast is so, but people don't realize that before I started this podcast, there were a lot of podcasts that I listened to before. They were, they were, you know, when I started podcast, this was like ahead of its time. So so if I became this big number one thing all of a sudden, people don't realize that I listened to a lot of other people that learn. So I listened to the top podcast person that was basically he's the one that basically made the niche big, big. I usually listen to him a lot, and then what happened was I kind of stopped listening to him. I want to listen because what happened was his podcast format was really long. He usually did interview, but he interviews like 4 hours or a lot of hours long, a lot of hours long. So I usually watch it. I usually watch some interesting interviews with him, but as I said, time. I don't really have. Um, it took a lot of time. And what happened was what they usually talk about, where I was, but then I was at my grandmother's place, so I could just be always be watching it. After, but then I I never had the freedom that I kind of have now, so I had limitation as to what I could listen to. What happened was eventually I branched off out to him, and then got a more smaller, more niche one, and more niche podcast person that kind of tailored to kind of what I was going through in that period of time when I actually started podcasting. I usually listen to him religiously because his story was inspiring. And what happened was I listened to him a lot. Eventually, even when I was going through my phase of growth, like if you listen to various podcast episodes, I talk about the various growth to where I'm at now during the pandemic and stuff like that. When I was doing lockdown and stuff like that, I usually listen to him still because, and I see the changes in how his podcast grow and stuff over time. And he himself never thought he would be so. And he himself usually listen to podcasts and other YouTubers and stuff about the topic that he went into before he came in. So as I said, the past the past is the thing about the being in yeah, the future and the past is really complex. Like because I could talk about a topic now. I could tell about certain things in science. I don't realize, like for example, how it came about is like a long history. Like we're in 2023 now, so there's certain things that you learn, you realize that okay, like we learned. So certain things that I learned during my university years. and the people that invented it. For example, like I guess I pull out fancy or Google and search for it. I know I oh, never mind. Or you know why not? For example, toxicology. That is the study of poison. I look for that and see first who created and what year he created. Imagine. And and the reason why I'm telling this because this podcast, I'm doing science is my main thing, Science is my main thing. Couple years now by 2050, somehow, some way, all of a sudden I will be one of those grandfathers person that people will be like, oh yes, remember the Colin theory that became what that would be become a Colin fact now. So the Colin theory that became a Colin fact, and then what people won't realize is that my Colin theory was taught to me by maybe somebody in my family, maybe by my grandmother that I basically took, and because my grandma was not really like that person that want to become famous and all those stuff. She taught me because and the thing about it is that when she taught me, she learned it from someone else when she was younger as well. So he passed a lot of knowledge on to me, and then what happened was I maybe use that knowledge now to make it more standard and more established for the science community. So what happened is that my grandma way of telling me stuff would be more like casual, casual, not for really and more established person. And I would just take that knowledge now and just take it to the next level, put it in a form that is more educated, education worthy, where the smart, anybody, the intelligent, every person can digest it and understand it and see the value in it, and then when it becomes a standard, and be like, oh yes, it's the great Colin theory, great Colin theory. And then what happened was in the future now, you hear that okay, the great Colin theory wasn't really created by Colin at all. It was by his grandmother. And that would be the side story that basically will blemish my whole my whole legacy though, because I'll be known for this great Colin theory that became a Colin fact, but there always be this side story. But no, it never came from Colin. It was like so. The reason why I'm telling you this, I'm going to give you another example. The DNA. So we learn about DNA, and it. So I never found the information about toxology, but the DNA was most of the stuff we learned about the DNA was learned. I think was it became big all of the main things that we learn about DNA are not really all of the main thing, but one of the most important things that we learn when we were learning about DNA, it was two guys. It was two guys that actually did it and found it out and I made it and basically published a work with it. So when we learn about it, we learn that okay, these two guys are the person that did it. But I said one of our lecturers was a woman. One of our lecturers was a woman. So when she told us that no, there will be the next story about okay, where she would say that okay, yeah, these were created by these two guys, but it was based on this woman's research and expertise and assistance, which technically she was right. She was right or could be right. But how history said it was that history said it was these two guys that actually create. who actually did this thing. So I'm just going to try to find. I said, it will take a the thing about it now. These science stuff, I can't really go with details into it now because what happened is I'm an employee now, so I'm to learn a lot of. So what I'm learning is other core skill to actually enhance my science ability. So while I'm trying to learn that other core skills actually enhance my science ability, I want to know this science stuff on a basic level, right? And like in school, I was studying this stuff 24/7. I read not 24/7, but 8 hours a day. So eventually, I know the theory very deeply. But what happened was when you leave university or school, the school setting for 4 years, you start to really kind of forget the specifics of of the science stuff that you learned for so long. But what happened is that you kind of learn general stuff, but real life will have you stray from it, and you have to really get back into it. But you have to have a plan because as I said, this real life stuff, real life. There's you have professional, you have a personal, you have a social, family, all those stuff. I have to balance it all when you into this real life stuff. So certain things are going to take a back burner. So like for example, my science stuff. Back when I was in the pandemic, my science stuff, I had to really be sharp on that. But now we're kind of in this calm version. What I know is I know it, let's say I know it. It's a part of me now. So I don't know the specific, but I know when the issue arises that my science knowledge would actually require, it's ingrained into me enough that I can say, okay, this is why this is happening. And this is my theory of the solution, and I could apply it there. So that's, yeah, and that is as a result of of 4 years of not dying from experimentation that I took in the real world. If you get what I mean, in the sense that I try something and I learn from it, and I'm now here alive to tell the tale. So what happened was, if that problem occurs now, I know the reason why it will happen and know how to solve it. So yeah. So what happened is 4 ye- 4 years out of university, I don't have knowledge now. I have experience. Experience. Mhm. So back to this future and past episode. As I said, the first thing is the truth. That's what's important about this future and the past. You have to know. You have to can go back to the past and be like, okay, this is what happened. Because the thing about the past is you can't change it. You can't change it. That's the thing about the past. You can't change it. In the time machine stories and movies, yeah, people try to change it, and when they go back to the future, there's a lot of things that goes wrong. But the thing about it is in the real, I think, I guess this is my theory now. In the real world, the past it cannot change it. You know what? So that's a theory. That's a theory. In- So the past, in my idealistic, I think you're able to you may be able to change it, but what happened is that, I guess the way I should say it is that the past is constant. There's a constant past, and you can have a tweaked version of it. So it will be like, for example, this is the past. This is the real past. Is what give you a great example. The Bible. The Bible give you a real history for religious people, for Christians, about the past of this world and about the future, past, the past, the present, and the future. The Bible really gives you all of that. It gives you all of that, the past, present, and the future. The thing about that Bible thing is that you can't change the past and you can't change the future. It's inevitable. So that's example of what this title is about. The Bible give, so whether you want to believe it or not, really believe the Bible or not, the thing about it is that the Bible gives you their past, present, and future. They give you all of that. So it's up to you. You can deny it and all of that. It's like, yo, it's like God saying, hey, I presented you my thesis here. I presented you my thesis here. You can't go through and say it's critique it or what, but yo, this is my thesis. This is what's going to happen. This is my take. It's what's going to happen. So when it happens, you can't say I didn't tell you. So that's what the Bible is. You know. So that's an example of what the future and past I'm talking about, where you can go back in the Bible and say, yes, okay, yes, God did say this was going to happen, and it did happen. So it's constant. We have the truth right here. He did say this was going to happen, and it did happen. And when we reach the end and meet this paradise future that he talks about at the end, when we get there now, then we have the Bible and be like, and read them be like, yeah, he did say that. He did say that for real. And it happened. And what happened was when I reach that future now, and then future generations now, when they are living in this paradise that God talks about in the Bible, I reach there and be like, and the future generation read the Bible and they're living in paradise, they'll be like, yo, they'll be like, yo, this God person was a prophet. This God person was a prophet or something. Because he told you exactly what's going to happen and he actually and we are living it right now. So it's like so that's an example of the future and the past that I'm talking about where you the future person, the future generation, or even the present people can have detail, like a detail, like a book or a reference to say, like, okay, yo, this is what happened. This is what happened. And you can go back to the past and reference the present and be like, okay, yes, the Bible, this book, they said this did happen. And based on all the information that we see and how this future present is set, yeah, he was right. Our happening was that based on that thing that you found, they have so they tell about their present. So that's the thing. So that's it basically what this podcast could be like. So I'm telling you about my present now, and then I'm going to predict a future in it. Predict a future, and I will tell you why. And this has happened. I'm not the first that did this. They have been doing this from the dawn of time. Like for example, they've been doing it for the dawn of time. So they're telling about their present, and they be like, and some maybe some journalists or some people say, oh, in the year 2000. So but that's when I was in the 90s. People in the 90s, and be like, in the year 2000, what will think will happen? And there are people that saying like, yo, they'll be flying cars and all those stuff. Or- and I'm in 2023, and there's no flying cars yet. Yeah, but what happened was they could be right. Flying future cars could be on the way soon, but what happened was the feasibility of the flying car may not be the reason why it's not there yet. Like for like the thing about the future is that because of all the bad decisions that we made during the past and stuff like that, the future is taking a while to create. It's taking a while because we have to really fix all the problems of the past so that we can actually create the future. Because what we're doing right now, we're patching up the present. We're making all this makeshift solution for the present. So like 2008 American financial crisis, they patched that up. They were patching up the present, the kind of ease the burden, and then that patching up resulting in their 2020 breakdown. And they in 2020 breakdown, they did a fix the solution. They patched up again, so the problem is still there. And now we're in 2023. So maybe by 2030, they that big crisis is gonna come again, and they're going to try to patch that up, but the patch is not going to work. They're going to break down, and then all everything they had was going to crumble down. And it's because they didn't fix the past. They just basically was patching up the present, and because they did patch, fix the past and they keep on patching up the present, they won't create the future, and then they will lose their status. So I said there's a lot more to talk about in the future and past, but I'm coming to the end of this episode. Yeah, I'm at the phase now where I can only record 30 minutes maximum again, so I have to end it right now. So, but there, I guess there's more that I could talk about, but in another episode. So, thank you for listening to this episode, and I look forward for the next episode. Mhm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
Budgeting, budgeting. This is a good topic now because I'm getting income. When I get in income, I think about it now why this episode is important because when you're getting income now, you're getting taxed. You're getting taxed on the income. So that's a negative thing about getting income. You're getting taxed on it, which is why when I was doing this podcast and stuff like that, you have to be valued the time that you're not making money and such like that. Because what happened is that those hard work, those non-tax hard work, is you that is actually putting in effort that relies on you. Because what happened that nobody's paying you and stuff like that. So it's like it's up to you to determine that okay, I have to put in effort to actually get this done. So like for example, if you listen to the whole first